question, you can use the Q&A function and we'll pick up some of the questions. You can also upvote some of the questions so that the moderator sees them. And this meeting is being recorded, and we'll use the recording to upload it on our website and circulate and share the information. So welcome again, and I'm very happy to open this webinar. The webinar on heritage as a driver for new local creative entrepreneurship. And I'm welcoming, of course, our colleagues who are joining us from across Italy, from different places, but also from across OECD countries. So welcome, and very happy to see you all. This webinar is part of a project, an exciting project that we're doing together with the Ministry of Culture in Italy, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the delegation of Italy to the OECD. It's a project to support Italian heritage cities, but I guess lessons will be also relevant for many heritage cities across the OECD, on preparing, on thinking about, on designing their recovery strategies. So together with our heritage cities in Italy, and these are some 13 cities that participated and were finalists of the Italian Capital of Culture over the past few years, we brainstormed and we picked 3 priority themes for this project. And these priorities are heritage and well-being and inclusion, heritage and entrepreneurship, and heritage and tourism. And we organize a series of 3 webinars on these topics. And why we're doing that, it's really to provide and develop some very practical how-to guidance on how to leverage on the power of cultural heritage in the recovery. So with that, I'm very pleased to introduce our partners in this project. Italy has been driving the OECD agenda on culture before it became a global leader for the G7 and G20. And I'm very happy to introduce our speakers for the opening. Antonio Bernardini, Ambassador of Italy to the OECD, and Paolo Toschi, who is Italian G20 Chair of the Culture Working Group and Diplomatic Advisor to the Minister of Culture. Welcome to you, and please, Mr. Bernardini, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Caterina. Thank you very much for giving me the floor, and welcome everybody to this second seminar of a series of webinars that Italy is organizing on this very important subject for us. We have been always pushing and supporting discussion regarding culture in an environment like the one of OECD that is focusing, of course, on economy. I'm chairing an OECD ambassadors group, Friends of Culture, Tourism and the Creative Industries. This is an initiative we have taken to provide a platform to exchange ideas on trends, issues, and policy responses in these 3 sectors. Of course, the crisis has been playing a big role in focusing on these sectors, which were seen probably before the COVID-19 as marginal sectors within the OECD, sectors to which dedicate a relative attention. The crisis has shown that, on the contrary, these are very important economic sectors, very important activities in our own societies. In the last meeting that we had in this group of ambassadors, we dedicated to creative industries. So we spent some time to discuss video games, fashion, movie, and popular music. It has been really very stimulating, and it shows how much this interest of ambassadors can investigate different sectors that actually are playing a very important role in our own economy. So we are focusing on these activities, and this has been a part of the task of also of the Italian presidency of the G20, where we have dedicated, of course, a lot of attention to culture, and my colleague Paolo Toschi will intervene on this issue, telling us what has been done in that context. Now, in the OECD, we are working on 2 projects. One is a joint project with the European Commission involving Emilia-Romagna, and this project on recovery strategies for Italian heritage cities. Of course, culture has entered with a lot of strength and attention also in all the plans that governments are shaping in order to support the economy, and in the context of the Italian Recovery and Resilience Plan, of course, there is a lot of attention on culture, and I'm so glad that Erminia Shakitano, a senior advisor, the Cabinet of Ministers of Culture, will present these measures later today. This webinar as I was saying at the beginning, is the second in a series of 3 webinars organized by the OECD in cooperation with the mission with the Italian Ministry of Culture. This project aims to support the Italian heritage cities in leveraging culture as a part of their recovery strategies and promoting culture-led local development. In this project, we have involved a number of Italian cities. Let me mention them: Bari, Bergamo, Bitonto, Casale Monferrato, L'Aquila, Pieve di Soligo, Reggio Emilia, Taranto, Trapani, Trento, Verbania, and Volterra. They represent different realities from across Italy and have a strong policy focus on heritage and tourism development. Today, we look forward to learning more from Volterra, Trapani, and Trento. The other cities will share their experience in the next webinars. Obviously, these discussions are timely for many cities around the world that face similar challenges and are welcome to join and share their reflections. I welcome cities and regions that are joining us today from across Europe, OECD, and beyond. At the conclusion of this series of webinars, we will present the outcome of what we have learned to a wider public. I'm sure that the Italian experience will reveal issues, ideas, proposals that will be useful to confront with other cities in the world to refine and shape the better policies in support of culture and to foster local development. This is the key work of OECD, and we are so glad to be partnering in this endeavor. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador. And yes, indeed, we all look forward to learning from Italy and our cities, and we are sure that there will be a lot of inspiring examples across the OECD. Mr. Toski, well, thank you for your support, for the Ministry of Culture support to this work. And of course, we are also eager to hear from you maybe some updates on the success of the first G20 meeting, a ministerial meeting, and the working group on culture. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ekaterina, and thank you to Ambassador Bernardini and colleagues at OECD. Yes, we had spoken, as you will recall, in May, anticipating the first meeting of the G20 Ministers of Culture. That meeting took place, and today, as you will know, we are preparing for hosting the summit of the G20 leaders in Rome. Really, as we speak. It's been a long ride. I'll give you a couple elements about how the G20 under the Italian leadership has focused on culture, and then briefly I will mention how the topic that you are rightfully focusing upon, the contribution of heritage to growth and sustainable development, and how creative industries are part of that, is central in Italy's new budget just approved, and to how the action of our government is moving forward. So firstly, the G20 on culture and the G20 Culture Ministerial took place at the end of July 29 and 30th in Rome. It was a first. The OECD gave great input, and I'm happy to thank all of the colleagues from OECD headquarters and institutions, including the Trento Centre, who gave their input. What resulted from long months of negotiation was the first ever declaration of the G20 Ministers of Culture, entirely coherent with the role of the G20 as an international forum for economic coordination. So there's a great focus in that declaration on how creative industries are central to growth, not just any growth, of course, but to sustainable, balanced, robust growth and sustainable development. It's a pledge by all of the G20 governments to continue putting culture at the center of their growth strategies, building on the potential that the creative industries reveal day in, day out. We had a brief exchange on this with Ambassador Bernardini before we just started. He mentioned one of the industries that is most vibrant, the movie industry, and many others contribute greatly. Think about the publishing industry, think about the digital access to cultural content in general, how these players are creating opportunities on our markets, and all of our countries in the G20 framework recognized these opportunities and the importance to empower them, and giving them a chance to contribute to the goals that we share of prosperity. Now, how does the G20 move forward from this accomplishment is in the hands of the leaders who are meeting today, who will also discuss how culture is central to their mission. And we will see how their final declaration will address these topics. We are confident and hopeful there will be a lot of culture in their meetings and in their endeavors. So stay tuned is all I can say, really. But we are very, very encouraged by their attention to our endeavor. Italy is also nationally looking very closely at these topics and the project that you are bringing forward. And thanks to the OECD and our perm reps at the OECD's leadership. And so thank you, Ambassador Bernardini. That project is really, I would say, a testament of how we are focusing on this nationally and internationally. At a national level, the 2022 budget really puts these issues at front and center. There's great focus, for instance, on the movie and audiovisual industry. We have measures that empower this industry, including tax credits that will be brought forward and investment support. We want to build on the basis that recognize that these can be very profitable endeavors, that it is up to private investors to find these opportunities and recognize them, and government is encouraging and creating the best playground and the best conditions for these investments to be successful. That is the overarching mission. We're also investing on the youth, and for instance, helping 18 years old to access cultural content and giving them the resources to do it. And that, of course, is meant to have a boost effect on cultural industries and cultural access in general. We're also supporting libraries, archives, what we call the places of culture in our system, with a great focus on smaller and rural areas, smaller villages, hamlets, as we say, villaggi, borghi, and rural areas. They're really at the center of the effort that we're making nationally, because they're such a great part of Italy's wealth, both socially, economically, and culturally, that they need all of the attention that they can get. And so I'm glad to see that this is also an angle that you're pursuing in your project. And as you know, as a last element of my brief discussion with you, our efforts to develop the next generation EU through our National Recovery Plan is very coherent with this overall vision. And some of us will give you further detail, but I'm glad to see that some of the Italian players that you're involving in this activity are directly connected with the great effort that our National Recovery Plan is putting in place. For instance, encouraging and supporting digital access to cultural content, setting up infrastructure for citizens to access archives, libraries, museums digitally, creating opportunities for more energy efficiency in theaters, cinemas, museums, and so forth, eliminating access barriers to the attractors of tourism and places of culture, and much more. Broadly, there's a sense that we are projecting the cultural industry into a new era, an era that has great promise, and we are determined as a government to help them pursue this path successfully. So thank you to the OECD, thank you to colleagues in Paris and across the OECD membership for your focus. Italy cares deeply, the Italian Ministry of Culture cares deeply about this endeavor, and your focus is very welcome. Thank you again, and I wish you happy proceedings.
Yes, thank you so much. One of the topics that you introduced also in the G20 agenda is, of course, culture and environment, culture and climate change. Of course, the impact of climate change on culture, but also how culture can elevate and mitigate these different impacts. And in a few days, we'll hear more on this, because this is also one of the topics that Italy and the UK introduced in the COP26. So this work continues and hopefully will lead to very concrete solutions. You mentioned, well, of course, a lot of things, but you mentioned, well, the tax incentives that you have in Italy. And indeed, the art bonus is one of the most successful examples that works very well. And we are learning from it and also trying to share with other OECD countries. And well, when we look, of course, forward to hear from Erminia Cecchitano on the overall Italy recovery plan for what concerns culture, and specifically also what is planned for the borghi, for the smaller villages. So that's all very interesting. So with this, Ambassador Bernardini, Ambassador Toschi, thank you very much for joining us, and feel free to stay, of course, we'll be more than happy. So now we have a very dense agenda for the next couple of hours. Let me maybe show you a very short overview, and then I'll pass over to Pierluigi. So we decided to structure this webinar in two parts. Well, in the first one, we'll hear from international examples, experiences. So we'll hear, and it's not just, well, 3 presentations. In these 3 presentations, you'll learn about, I think, something like 25 places, because all of them are very rich, and these are networks of places that work on different aspects of entrepreneurship, development, innovation, etc. And then after a very short break, we'll move on to hear examples and projects from our partner heritage cities in Italy. And of course, it's there where we'll also learn about how Italy in its recovery and resilience plan will be supporting cultural and creative sectors. So with this, I'm very happy to pass the floor and the moderation to our colleague, Professor Pierluigi Sacco, who is Senior Advisor to OECD on Culture and Local Development. Please, Pierluigi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Katia. I'm really happy to have the opportunity to moderate this, I think, exciting couple of panels in which, as Katia said, we have really much to learn and to survey in terms of ongoing experiences that actually demonstrate the potential of culture for local development. And we start with the international panel, where we have 3 projects, 3 experiences that are absolutely noteworthy. First of all, we will have with us Agnes and Sarolta Nemeth, who are the coordinators for the ECOC SME Interreg project. It's a project that illustrates the role of small and medium enterprises in the European capitals of culture. Then we have Maria Chiara Esposito from the European Commission and Cristina Garzillo from ICLEI that will discuss ROC, which is a very interesting project on cultural heritage leading urban futures that really explores the possibility of heritage to create urban cultural ecosystems. And finally, we will have a presentation from Joseano Urdangarin from the Basque government and from Cristina Ortega from the University of Deusto about the Innovation Crossovers initiative that the Basque government is dedicating today to the innovation in the cultural and creative sector. So a really exciting array of presentations, and I'm happy to give the floor for the first to Agnes and Sarolta Nemeth for the ECOC SME case study.
Thank you. Let us show our project video first, as we agreed, and then we can. So please.
Three years, 7 partners, 6 countries. The ECOC SME project unites past, present and future European capitals of culture, capitalizing on the potential of their titles to trigger, strengthen and diversify local entrepreneurship. Between 5 partner cities, Leeuwarden, Matera, Rijeka, Timișoara and Kaunas, our approach is co-creation through creative and innovative cooperation, clustering and networking between sectors and between regions. By organizing inter-regional workshops, open seminars and regional local learning labs, our project partners and our stakeholders had the opportunity to see how other cities dealt or are dealing with similar issues, develop new innovations to strengthen the local culture and business sector, and solutions to alleviate COVID-19 impacts. The result of such an intensive multi-channel interregional learning is the database of good practices. In this database, you can find programs, infrastructures and networks to support cultural startups. More importantly, these exchanges of approaches, experiences and practices were translated into our partners' action plans for local and regional policy changes.
In Matera, we have seen how a startup ecosystem can be valuable for cultural and creative entrepreneurs. Together with our local stakeholders, we have put the startup system under the microscope and investigated how we could create a better support for cultural and creative entrepreneurs.
Een van deze acties is erop gericht om het start-up ecosysteem toegankelijker te maken voor culturele en creatieve ondernemers. Een goed voorbeeld hiervan is de Culture Launch Game. De Culture Launch Game is een evenement waar jij in 3 à 4 uur tijd alle fases van jouw culturele of creatieve onderneming doorloopt.
One of our actions was inspired by this cultural launch game. Rijeka has a well-developed startup ecosystem, and Leeuwarden's idea and findings from their local learning labs encouraged us to adapt our existing infrastructure to the specific needs of entrepreneurs and potential entrepreneurs from CCI. We also learned from Matera. They have shown that the sustainable model of creative cities includes collaboration between creatives, artists, experts, researchers and entrepreneurs. Through our action plan, we will create a space, physical and virtual, in which all these different actors come together, collaborate, learn from each other and thus prosper.
Our action plan focused on understanding the role of creative industries in supporting local development. And it has been inspired by the work of our colleagues from Rijeka and Timișoara with their exploration of the cooperation between creative industries and traditional sectors and their focus on understanding the needs of the sector in order, through their action plan, to give an answer concretely to them.
Timișoara Action Plan covers 3 actions that aim at building increased capacity of SMEs from the cultural and creative sector in all 3 stages of the European Capital of Culture: the preparation, the mega event year and the legacy years. One of the actions, Oxygen for Creatives, is meant to be a long-term action, an action for 2023 and beyond for a sustainable cultural and creative ecosystem. We took inspiration from Rijeka's creative doctors and looked at our local campaign Oxygen pentru Timișoara.
În timp ce campania Oxigen pentru Timișoara aduce împreună municipalitatea, organizații non-guvernamentale, voluntari și sectorul economic împreună pentru a ajuta spitalele și comunitatea în fața pandemiei, platforma digitală Oxigen pentru Creativ vine în sprijinul antreprenorilor culturali și creativi. Această platformă va fi creată pentru a reduce decalajul dintre provocări, a găsi soluții financiare pentru comunitate, folosind cultura ca un liant pentru o comunitate mai puternică. Un posibil proiect de moștenire pentru Timișoara 2023.
Action Plan of Kaunas focuses on entrepreneurship education and integration of creative communities. During our meetings in Leeuwarden and Matera, we were inspired by a few good practices that gave us idea to include our partners from KONA's 2022 Capital of Culture team, and also from KONA's Entrepreneurship department.
As our project is a couple of months away from finishing the first phase of our project, we can proudly say that we have broadened our horizon and fostered new, meaningful skills, ideas, and relationships. We look forward to the second phase of our project, when our actions will be implemented.
Okay. So, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Agnes Német, and I'm leading the coordinating team of the Interreg Europe Project's Action for Inducing SME Growth. You can find us under the short name of the project, ECOC SME. I work for the University of Eastern Finland, which is not included in the partner regions, but because we are not the European Capital of Culture city, but we are the coordinating team. So let me talk about our project a bit more in detail. Our project was formed to find answers and possible solutions on how small and medium-sized enterprises could be engaged in and strengthened through the European Capital of Culture projects. And since the summer of 2019, with the support of the Interreg Europe program, 5 regions across Europe that in recent and forthcoming years host European Capital of Culture have come together for mutual learning and knowledge exchange. Participants have elaborated and started also to implement so-called action plans in order to improve their existing policies, municipal, regional strategies, EU co-finance, regional operative programs. And their objective is the promotion of local SMEs and new entrepreneurships, mainly by way of increasing cross-sectoral cooperation, including linking local entrepreneurship to the European Capital of Culture and its positive long-term legacy. We were particularly motivated from the very beginning of our project, since this objective has not been explicitly part of the European Capital of Culture program and its evaluation criteria. And candidates do not get any specific guidance either in this regard. Our participant regions are Leeuwarden and Friesland, holding the European Capital of Culture in the Netherlands in 2018. Matera from the Basilicata region in Italy, holding the European Capital of Culture event in 2019. Rijeka, Croatia, having the title in the unlucky year of 2020. Timișoara from the West region of Romania, European Capital of Culture originally in 2021, but then the title was postponed to 2023. And Kaunas from Lithuania, European Capital of Culture next year in 2022. The partnership contains cultural and business development departments and municipalities and incubators, as well as an entrepreneurship training center. And what is very important, that they bring in with them their respective local regional networks that spread to diverse fields of sectors. So how do we work? We worked together for 3 years. We finished our 2nd year now. We started by identifying focus areas where partner regions could define their local gaps and needs for policy improvement, and also where they would share their own achievements and experiences with each other. Then a series of local workshops were launched to feed into and consequently incorporate inputs from interregional study visits and meetings in the partner regions. And 2 vital elements to the success of this policy development project is the 2-way interaction between these local and interregional learning activities. And also the active engagement of the policy responsible public authorities in the 5 regions from the very beginning. Our ECOC SME project does not only work out new improved policy actions, as you could hear it from our video, but in the 5 participant regions, in the 3rd year, these are right away tested by being implemented during the last year of the project. And now let's see some highlights of the project's action plans. Firstly, some governance innovation, bringing together representatives of different sectors, as well as inviting community for co-creation. Let's see an example from Matera, Basilicata region. In the Basilicata Heritage Smart Lab action, the method of cross-sector labs and open design methodology, as well as a digital platform called Heritage Smart Platform are used to engage local communities and support networking and exchanges on the national and international levels. The aim is to create more heritage sites for Matera and Basilicata, both for community building and for tourism. And in this, they define potential sites. Then they focus on 10 and their local 10 sites and their local collaborative ecosystems. And then eventually they develop local plans for the creation of these 10 heritage sites. The other examples I would like to introduce here very shortly are from Leeuwarden and Rijeka. They both aim at the strengthening of their cultural and creative sector linked to the European Capital of Culture projects. The European Capital of Culture in 2018 in Leeuwarden revealed that there are great potentials in the CCI sector for the whole region, but there is no regional support system for cultural and creative businesses. So the implementation of their actions is basically linked to the European Capital of Culture legacy program called Leeuwarden Friesland to make up for such lacking opportunities. So a series of launch games for CCI is being introduced in Leeuwarden now, in the third year, which is a dynamic game where teams can experience what it's like to start their own new businesses. In 2 hours, using short sessions with various advisors, they experience the startup of their cultural and creative company. The other action in Leeuwarden is about connecting cultural and creative industry to the already existing Friesland project machine in order to bring opportunity structures, for example, EU funding opportunities closer to existing and future businesses in the CCI sector. The Croatian city of Rijeka implemented a series of interrelated actions, but here I have only time to mention shortly one, the Creative Doctors Initiative. This is a support mechanism which solves problems, and at the same time it also serves as a collaborative platform and a base for creating intra-sectoral and mostly cross-sectoral cooperation aimed at sustainable development. This action connects those in challenge, problem, or dilemma with the existing network of experts and peers of Rijeka's startup incubator. The most important function is the establishment of two-way communication between those with a problem and those with possible solutions. An interesting example comes from Timișoara, from the West region of Romania, where they had to start with awareness raising and to show the gains and the benefits of cross-sectoral discussions and partnerships. The Cultural to Business C2B hackathon event already was organized for a long weekend in Timișoara to help prospective entrepreneurs in developing their cultural businesses, and for existing SMEs to develop new products, especially related to the European Capital of Culture event and its legacy. The other similar event is called the Creative Talks and Matchmaking Fair, Conference Meets Exhibition. This is a similar but a bit different event. This is a two-day event to raise awareness with the direct aim to invite also the local public. The third action is a long-lasting product which uses inputs from the previous events and invites the participants to use it. It's a platform called Oxygen for Creatives, and it will be set up towards the European Capital of Culture in 2023. And here I have to come to my last example because of a shortage of time. My last examples are from Kaunas, and here the actions do not particularly focus on the CCI sector. Instead, they implement innovative learning methods and training programs to mobilize youth and education for entrepreneurship. In these, there is also intention to promote startups in the framework of the Kaunas 2022 ECOC event. The action called Lessons from Business to Culture and Back includes innovative co-learning methods in workshops that bring together people from Kaunas's cultural and business communities in order to improve mutual understanding and chances for collaboration. And in the Kaunastic Startups action, which is a 7-week training program for potential startups from all higher education institutions of the city, the selection of participants will include also the aspect of being active in the implementation of Kaunas 2022 European Capital of Culture as an advantage. See, of course, more and the 5 action plans here. You can find the link here, and you can find our website as well. And just to finish it with a thought that I see many of the points very relevant to issues raised in the introductory speeches on how to mobilize potential on the local regional level, but also the importance of the international networking and exchanges, which actually was building up our project. And thank you for your attention, and please visit our website again and social media for more interesting news and good practices. And of course, our 5 action plans, ready-made, fresh, signed actions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Agnes. Really, really interesting presentation, especially the emphasis of the importance of the legacy projects in really getting the impact on the territory in the critical post-capital phase. I think this is one of the most important lessons learned, and by the way, one of the weak points of so many culture capitals programs before. So very, very useful project. Thank you so much. Now, at this point, I would like to pass the floor to Maria Chiara Esposito and Cristina Garzillo for the ROC project.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pierluigi, and thanks, Caterina, for inviting us. Of course, I'm very happy to be here, not just to introduce the ROC project, but especially to represent the European Commission and EAC, where I work in the one unit on cultural policies, and we are an official partner of OECD in this big endeavor for culture and local development. So it's very important to give the context to the ROC project, which is what I'm trying to do now, and then I will leave it to Cristina to go into the details of the project. Indeed, we are behind many of the actions that culture has been developing across the sectors and across communities, also at local and regional level in the latest years, and especially framing, let's say, the setting in which the ROC project developed its actions. We have been cooperating very much with the DG on Research and Innovation in the European Commission. And the ROC project is the result of an important call under Horizon 2020. So the research program, the previous research program at the EU level, where action for cultural heritage and cultural regeneration, focusing on local communities and cities as laboratories for developing creativity and then local development, were, let's say, the pioneers. And what I also wanted to mention in this more recent cooperation that we are developing in the Commission across the different DGs that are in charge of culture and of mainstreaming the cultural funds under the different programs, the support that will come in particular from the research program, the New Horizon Europe, for the coming 7 years, will really leverage the results and the findings from the previous projects that were indeed paving the way for the new investments that will be more and more dedicated to culture, cultural heritage, and also developments in the field of creative and cultural industries. So the role of ROC in showing how the local communities were, thanks to the European support of Horizon 2020, able to use creativity, which is indeed the driver also for development of cities and regions where there is the capacity to understand how cultural and cultural heritage resources were really the key aspects that were allowing this development to happen, is being more and more put under attention. So what I really want to stress are three, let's say, key areas of this project that will now be described by Christina, which somehow correspond to the three pillars also that will be available under Horizon Europe. So you see how this connection, the importance of research and innovation is more and more evident for fostering the link between culture and development. And these three, let's say, keywords and key areas are accessibility, sustainability, and collaboration. So this you should really have it in mind when it comes to projects based on research activities that have cities and local communities as their testing laboratories, but also with the view to producing innovation by having strict and close collaborations between the local policymakers and the creative and cultural industries and the cultural heritage and big research institutions. So this idea of fostering new collaborations to create societal impact and to regenerate historic and urban on cultural based centers, starting from investing in sustainability and accessibility is really the main message of this project. And I will now leave the floor to Christina to explain you how the project made it possible through its own partners and actions. Thank you, Christina, for jumping in.
Yes. Thanks a lot, Maria Chiara, and thanks a lot also to OECD team for inviting me here today. I would like now to share my screen if possible. Okay. I hope you can see. Yes, my name is Cristina Garzillo and I work for ICLE, Local Governments for Sustainability, which was indeed a partner in this project. ROC demonstrated that historical cities are kind of extraordinary laboratories where cultural heritage can be a unique and a powerful engine of regeneration, sustainable development and economic growth for the entire city, actually, and combining innovations at different levels to create replicable models for heritage-led regeneration. Now, as Maria Chiara was saying, it is a project that was funded by Horizon 2020 program for research and innovation and was coordinated by the city of Bologna and brought together 32 partners, among which 10 cities, 7 universities, 2 city networks, and cultural heritage experts and technological partners. So really a very complex team with different skills and different experiences, which was quite interesting for the synergies, but then we realized while implementing how complex it was to manage. The approach that ROC applies to urban regeneration is a circular one, integrated and holistic, as you can see in this slide on the ROC circle. Can you still see? I think there was
yes. There was a technical problem with your PowerPoint, so I'm sharing for you. If you let me know when to move the slides forwards, then I can do that.
Okay, thank you. So this is, there were 6 interconnected pillars in the rock circle, which were creative, cultural, regeneration, knowledge, security, and green circles. And with this approach, the ROC project managed actually to bridge the gap between preservation and conservation of the cultural heritage, and on the other side, contemporary issues such as sustainability, creativity, social innovation, and connectivity. And the project actions were actually concentrated in 3 cities, replicator cities, called replicator cities, that were Bologna, Lisbon, and Skopje, which were supported by 7 role model cities with their kind of successful examples of regeneration guided by culture and cultural heritage. And these were Turin, Vilnius, Eindhoven, Lyon, Liverpool, Cluj-Napoca, and Athens. Now, as Maria Chiara was saying, being cities with very different local context, we decided to concentrate on 3 specific axes, which worked as guidelines for the implementation of pilot actions. And these were the accessibility, the sustainability, and the new collaborations. In the next slide, you can see that ROC followed an approach that we call research, action, research. This means that we had a first phase of mapping aimed at identifying problems, gaps, challenges, but also resources of the historical city centers, and in particular of those areas that were identified as pilot areas for the experimentation. Then we had a second phase, which was obviously directed to the action, but also supported by the testing of specific and innovative technologies for cultural heritage, as well as processes and services. And finally, we came back to research, taking the experience and the data that was coming from actions and turning them into recommendations, governance toolkits, financial schemes, integrated management plan to be applied to other localities, and also that fed in to other European policies and initiatives. In the next slide, I can quickly show you a little bit the living labs, because these have created the conditions for the implementation of the ROC actions. And they have been also fundamental for the translation of the cultural heritage-led ideas and concepts into these activities. They were kind of constant facilitators of all the processes involving stakeholders of the specific area since the very beginning of the project. Now, in Lisbon, for example, ROC worked to place the Living Lab into the heart of the Marvila area, Marvila district, which is a former industrial area very close to the historical and touristic center, affected by isolation and gentrification threat, also because separated by a river and a railway line. In the case of Skopje, ROC brought a very strong cultural change because it was working on the Jewish ghetto and on an old bazaar area, and experimenting for the first time participatory processes, which succeeded because they're still in place in bringing institutions to collaborate and work together. And in the case of Bologna selected the university area, which they called U area, both because of the university, but also because of the shape on the plan, on the map. And this is an area located at the heart of the historical center and characterized by high concentration of cultural heritage assets, but at the same time also affected by phenomena of decay and social conflicts between residents and students. Now, in the next slide, the question is, what have we learned from the ROC experience? And first of all, we can say that the importance and the effectiveness of overcoming the silos thinking approach, which brought together municipalities, universities, local stakeholders, and citizens working together. And on the one side, we have the positive impacts on the cities, which is the exchange the knowledge and experiment, co-designed possible solutions, with also this trial and error approach before proceeding towards a real long-term and more permanent fixture. On the other side, the university can make their research more transdisciplinary and can test it in real-life situation. And of course, citizens and stakeholders were empowered in a new role as agents and promoters as collaboration. Now, the last slide is only to show you about the results of this project that were collected in a book and a publication, which is an overview of the project, extracting themes, material, and remarks from the final conference that was named Open Knowledge Week. And the book shares indeed the results, the best practices, and the lessons learned from this research and the innovative action. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina. That was again, and of course, Maria Chiara, that was a really interesting presentation also because it stressed so clearly the need of cross-sectoral collaboration at all levels as the defining characteristic of heritage ecosystems today, which by the way is perfectly in line, of course, with the vision of the Faro Convention and so on and so forth. So I think that, of course, this is also very, very challenging in terms of how. So it's very important to learn from the concrete experiences that were laid out in the ROC project. And I really look forward to digging deeper into the final results of the project now that they have been published. Thank you so much. And at this point, we pass the floor to Jose Ana Urdangarin and Cristina Ortega for the presentation of the Basque Government Innovation Crossovers case.
Hello. Thank you very much, Pierluigi, for the invitation. And I will give the floor to my colleague, Jose Urdangarin, to start with the presentation. Thank you.
Hello, I am Jose Urdangarin from the Basque Country, and we are going to share this presentation, Christina and me. And we are going to talk about two main questions in this presentation. First of the two questions is we are going to talk about the CCIs in the Basque Country, how we are working with the lines of CRIS3 in the Basque Country. And after we are going to present a concrete project that is CCS and innovation contrast in the Basque Country. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. When we talk about the CCIs in the Basque Country, we are referring to a macro sector that encompasses 15 sectors. You see there the 15 sectors. We have 6 cultural sectors and 9 creative sectors, and including the cultural heritage like a cultural sectors. In figures, we have that in the Basque Country, we are 16,000 companies, and 70% of these companies are companies of less than 3 workers. We'll go to the next, please. You will see this is the line of work we are working in the last 6 years. And this is a project of collaboration amongst the 3 departments, the Economic Development Department, the Cultural Department, and the President's Department. And what we have done with this new macro sector. First, we have defined the perimeter and delimitation of the CCA sectors in the Basque Country. Second, we have made a structuration of 13 sectorial nodes to be more agile and more efficient in the new programs. And the third has been to launch innovative programs called KSI Berritzaile, like you see there, KSI Tech in in the fifth column. That has been related to technological innovation, innovation in business models, and training in financing. Finally, this year, 2021, we have created the Basque Cultural and Creative District. You see it there in the first column, and this is working 4 months ago. It's a platform that is working with the companies of the CCIs and also with the administrations. As a result of these programs, we are going to focus 2 examples of heritage and digital transition. First is an interpretation center in Gipuzkoa, and this is a collaboration between a technological center and the museum. And this is dedicated to museums and guided tours. Is a system of augmented reality that provides physical guidance along the corridors and identifies information in different languages. In this case, is in Catalan or in English. Always in the panels, there is no space, so this is an application, and there are not very expensive applications. And the second one is, if we go to the next slide, Cristina, is the rehabilitation project of Punta Begoña Gallery. This is a gallery that is in Getxo, and they have made a small project to see all the information with NFC sensors to interact with mobiles and have all the information that is not possible to include in the panels. In all this ecosystem, these 6 years, we found that the innovation that is being made in the CCI sectors doesn't appear in the indicators of innovation. So in 2020, we began with a project that is CCI's innovation. And this is the part that Cristina will explain you.
Thank you very much, Jose, and I will ask you to share the PowerPoint if you don't mind.
Okay.
Well, we will now take a closer look to a project that we have been working on this year, which focuses on innovation in the Basque Country. It is called CCCIs and Innovation Contrast. This project tries to get closer to innovation, research and development, and innovation measurement in the Basque Country. In this specific case, for this webinar, we will focus solely on innovation regarding the Oslo Manual and the value of culture. And I will also share with you a project in which innovative work is being carried out that is very well known, at least here, that is called the Cathedral of Santa Maria in Vitoria-Gasteiz. Jose, you didn't start sharing yet. The event that Jose was letting you know is organized, this CCCIs and Innovation Contrast is organized by the Department of Culture and Language Policy of the Basque government with the participation of key actors like the Basque Observatory of Culture. These sessions with international experts were part of the efforts of the Basque government to create spaces for the exchange of good practices and knowledge development. And the initiative tried to deal with the following detected issues: the low performance of the Basque Country in terms of indicators of innovation in the CCCI's sector, and the lack of participation of the major European statistical frameworks at the regional level, where few data is collected for the innovation measurement indicators. Well, the main objective of these sessions is to obtain knowledge to be able to design, implement, and evaluate better informed policies and initiatives in terms of CCCIs and innovation. Maybe we can go to the previous slides, Jose, where we will explain the methodology of the process. the first thing that we did, the previous one, yeah, previous, yeah, thank you. Okay, the first thing that we did is to ask the Basque Cultural Observatory to develop the basis to start these discussions, that it is a conceptual framework which combine the reflection regarding business innovation and the development of a culturally based social innovation model. Then we organized these online debates that started by the beginning of this year, and they finished just a month ago. And we invited key international and local experts to debate on innovation, research and development, and measurement of research, development, and innovation. And we have already made a synthesis of the main ideas that emerged from these working groups that we will present in a couple of weeks in an open conference in Bilbao. We can move to the next slide, please. And now I would like to briefly share with you some of the results of these discussions. We can move to the next slide. After a broader discussion on the topic of innovation, the reflection focused on the objectives of innovation as proposed in the Oslo Manual and on the three-dimensional model of the value of culture designed by the Basque Cultural Observatory and included in this conceptual framework that I have already let you know. Although the concept of innovation is intrinsically subjective, its application is fairly objective and comparable when applying shared references for novelty and utility, and by requiring a significant difference to be considered as such. For example, as regards novelty or improvement, the standard says that a new product or process must be generated or a significant change with regard to the existing must be produced. However, after the discussions held in this working group, the new understanding says that the newness of a product is contingent to its specific surrounding and places, not just globally, or that the change is contingent to user groups, especially including mental or physically impaired. And another general conclusion of this working group regarding innovation and CCCIs has been that Oslo objectives are valid and applicable to the CCCIs, but they need to be rethought for a specific context. For instance, acknowledging the territorial contingent nature of nuance. We can move to the next slide. And I would like to share with you the model that has been developed by the Basque Cultural Observatory in order to identify innovation practices within the sector and to be able to assess them. And this model has been reformulated after the contracts with these international experts. And as you can see in the screen, it has three dimensions. The first one has to do with the externalities of culture and creativity. The second one with culture and creativity as a tool for experience with meaning. And the last one, the idea of public value. We can move to the next slide. We have already tested this model, and we have chosen this example, the restoration of Santa Maria Cathedral, that has been selected as a good governance practice in the field of cultural heritage, because it addresses the type of innovation that boosts territorial development using non-technological means. It has a very well-known project called Open for Works, in which visitors enjoy looking at live restoration and archaeological works. Architects, archaeologists, stonemasons work in this innovative project in cultural tourism. And you can have access to further information in the website that is provided in the slides. 3 lessons learned from the project are the following: understanding cultural heritage as an open system in permanent updating and interaction with the environment, understanding cultural heritage as context of application based on interaction and deliberate learning between different types of disciplines, and finally, understanding cultural heritage as a system of inclusive innovation. And let's move to the next slide, the final one. Finally, I would like to let you know that we are organizing an open conference in Bilbao in a couple of weeks that will allow us to move from the discussion started during the CCCIs and innovation sessions, and will also serve as an ending to the process of discussion on the topics on innovation, research and development, and the measurement of research, development, and innovation within the CCCIs. And after this event, we will have a more mature conceptual framework and be able to design better informed policies regarding CCCIs and innovation, and we will be in a better position to share with you the results. Thank you very much. Now my colleague Josean will share very briefly with you one of the experiences that he has previously mentioned.
Okay, thank you. I think someone is sharing still. I'll try to share the video. Okay, now it's okay. Share some. Can you see it? Okay. This is the device of the Antigua Trento Centre that gives you information in both languages, Spanish and English, and also guides you through the interpretation center.
Stone bears the imprint of the past. Legend has it that the walls of this church were built using the stones thrown from afar by the Gentiles, giant mythological beings with massive strength. The presence of these fictitious personages helped to explain one of the mysteries of this church: how it came to be built in this location. La Antigua was built in the strategic spot.
This is a project that processes different business, cultural heritage, and technologies from augmented reality. Projects that has been done in 1 year. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Josean. That's really, I think, an impressive experience in terms of conceptualizing the innovation value of culture today and the role of R&D. I think this is one of the most advanced experiences that we have today. So it's really very important to learn from what's going on in this experiment. So I think we are now ready for a very quick, unfortunately, Q&A session, because we have run out of time, but there is one question from Matias Munoz for Cristina Garzillo, and it's what is lost in the implementation? We are in the context of the ROC project, of course. What is lost in the implementation from the research phase? So how, in particular, one calibrates the research results to the policy phase, given the specific workflow that the ROC project devised? Cristina.
Yes, so I was trying to respond very briefly in the chat, and I would say that the action was very much depending on the implementation, the work that was carried out within all of the living labs. So we had a general framework which was maintained throughout, but then the application varied among the cases, and depending also on the technological tools that each of these cases was adopting, because ROC was very much focused on also on technological tools, for example, the people flow, the crowd monitoring, or environmental indoor and outdoor sensors, or another tool that was more about neuroanalytics, so the perception that people have while passing by cultural heritage sites or artworks. So it was depending on this and on their specific focus. The recommendations were then deriving from the overall experience. So it was a bit a more general recommendation, but then we made it fit and match, for example, with to the orientation paper, and fed it there of the Partnership on Cultural Heritage of the Urban Agenda for the EU. Or we realized, for example, for the smart specialization strategies, how these cities could have a role in addition to regional authorities, and particularly focusing on the culture and cultural heritage. So it's a bit difficult to say exactly how this was under which circumstances it was turned, but as I said, there were the specific results that impacted on all the localities, and then there were more general recommendations that were then feeding also into the integrated management plans and more general recommendations, and also other EU initiatives such as the partnership.
Thank you very much, Christina. And well, at this point, we are ready for the break. That is a really quick 5 minutes break before we start with the second session with the highlights from the Italian heritage cities. So hello again. We are ready now to start with the second session, which is about the highlights from the Italian heritage cities, and it is a real pleasure to start this section as announced already in the introduction by Katia and by Paolo Toschi, to give now the floor to Erminia Sciacchitano for a presentation of the Italian Recovery and Resilience Plan and how it contains measures to support culture and cultural-led regeneration. Erminia, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Pierluigi. Thanks for the opportunity to share with you some insights on the national plan for our recovery, post-pandemic recovery, which has been produced thanks to the opportunity offered by the EU support in the framework of the Next Generation EU program. Let me share the screen. It seems someone else is sharing the screen. Can you please help?
It should be possible now. We've stopped sharing.
Oh, yeah, thanks. You see it now? You see the presentation?
We might have to zoom out a bit.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Thanks. Quickly, as you know, Italy, the Italian economy, it's really relying on culture and tourism, which are really important sectors for us. And therefore, the pandemic has created a real damage and has affected the two sectors heavily. This is why Italy has included the two sectors in its strategy for the recovery, and in particular has dedicated an entire mission, created an entire mission called Tourism and Culture in its National Recovery and Resilience Plan. So overall, the investment foreseen for culture and tourism is 6.675 billion. And the investment is targeting the objective of investment is to increase the attractiveness of Italian tourism and cultural systems through the modernization of their material and immaterial infrastructure. 4.27 billion of investments are allocated to culture, and let me say that I'm very proud that I made a very quick calculation that this means 2.23% of the overall plan, which amounts 191.5 billion euros. So this is really above the famous threshold of 2% dedicated to culture in recovery plans, which was requested by the European Parliament in several communications. In addition to that, we also have 1.46 billion euros, which are financed through a national complementary fund to protect, enhance, and promote 14 strategic cultural landmarks. The overall component, it is divided in three strands. The first measure is targeting cultural heritage, called cultural heritage for next generation. It aims at improving the cultural infrastructure. And of course, we had to make some strategic choices. You cannot do everything, but one important key strategic choice is to focus on the digital infrastructure for culture and for cultural heritage. So 500 million euros are dedicated to this objective. And it is a group of 12 projects which are integrated. And the aim of those projects is to increase, organize, and integrate and preserve the digital heritage of archives, libraries, museums, and cultural places, but also to offer the opportunity for cultural and creative industries to use and reuse digital cultural resources, and for the educational sector as well to use cultural resources. Another important trend is targeting the improvement of energy efficiency in the cinema, theaters and museums, 300 million, as Paolo Toschi before me has already announced. And this is very important because, as you know, the Next Generation EU plan, the European Commission has requested to focus heavily on the two, digital and the green transition. So this is another important contribution to the green part. And third, but equally important for us, is an important investment to remove the physical and cognitive barriers in museums, libraries, and archives. This is very important to enable wider access to and participation in culture. And while in the past years we made several interventions which have already removed, in particular, physical barriers in the cultural sites in Italy, the cognitive part is still lagging behind. So we are still around 18% of cultural sites which are equipped with tools and instruments to facilitate the better knowledge understanding of the heritage values. The second measure, and it's really important, is related to today's meeting. It's dedicated to cultural-led regeneration of small cultural sites, religious and rural heritage. Again, let me stress an important percentage. It's this 2.72 billion euros are 63% of the total investments on culture. It means that more than 0.5% of the total investment, it is dedicated, it is allocated to remote areas, to the famous diffused museum, which is Italy. We have an important national plan for the attractiveness of small historic towns, with several hidden gems in Italy. And this is also related to the phenomenon which was very, very evident during the pandemic of a repopulation of those small historic towns. Another important investment is targeting rural architecture and landscape, 600 millions. And also another important program of 300 million euros for the regeneration of around 110 parks and historic gardens. This only apparently, it's only apparently investment on a physical infrastructure. Both the plan for the attractiveness of small historic towns or the program to enhance parks and gardens as an important also component involved in engaging the cultural and creative industries of the territories. This is a real an important percentage for the regeneration of those areas. We had to that 800 million euros dedicated for to intervene for seismic safety of places of worship and heritage. And another important intervention is it's also focusing on the shelters for artworks. Again, this can be considered an additional investment for small and remote areas, because we should not forget how much important those churches, bell towers are for the local community and for the resilience of a local community in a country like Italy, which is very often hit by earthquakes and natural hazards. Another important aspect is I want to stress is this idea of a reconvert, reuse former nuclear power plants, let's say for the good, for the recovery of artworks in case of an emergency. The third one, it is targeting directly the cultural and creative industries. And again, this is in line with the indication of the European Commission to focus on the digital and green transition. An important investment to upgrade a strategic production hub for the cinema industry, which is the Cinecittà film studios in Rome. which needs to do an important intervention for not only on refurbishment but also upgrading all the infrastructure and the production system. And another important investment of 155 millions. It is meant to support the cultural operators to face the digital and green transition, to reach again the public that the cultural and creative sector could not meet anymore due to the pandemic. It is essential and fundamental for the sustainability of those cultural and creative operators. But this cannot be done now, creating damage to the environment. This is very clear, and we are on the eve of the COP26, and the commitment at the European level, it's very clear. So on one hand, it's important to help the operators to use better the digital tools. We know that how much the pandemic has accelerated for the cultural operators the digital transition, but it's true that still a model for economic sustainability while using those digital tools has not been really found. So this measure aims them at being better equipped in the use of digital tools, but also in finding ways to achieve again sustainability. And another strand of intervention is targeting really the ecosystem in which the cultural and creative sector operate, and especially reducing the carbon footprint of cultural events, but also to stimulate the eco-inclusive design. And this is also a contribution to the new European Bauhaus. I would say that this is complementary. We also have foreseen 14 strategic investments in key important areas, but these are found with a complementary national fund. And again, these are strategic places, hubs, and infrastructure. Again, these are not simply physical interventions, but are conceived as integrated interventions, promoting also and integrating cultural and creative activities in these areas. It's all for now, but I'm happy to respond to your eventual questions, requests for clarifications.
Thank you very much, Arminia. This is a very eloquent proof that Italy is really taking seriously culture in the National Recovery Plan, and also the complex articulation of the various dimensions really shows that it's really an ecosystemic approach. So I think it's particularly important now to hear from some of the Italian territories that are taking this challenge very seriously as well. And I am very happy to give the floor to Alessandro Furiesi, who's the director of the Pinacoteca Civica in Volterra, to present Volterra 22 for Tuscany, Capital of Culture 22. Alessandro, the floor is yours.
Alessandro, I think you're on mute. We can see you, but we're not currently able to hear you.
Okay.
That's better.
Now you say, okay, sorry for the, thank you for the opportunity to explain the work of Volterra in 2021 and 2022. Sorry, but the major cannot participate because he has an important meeting that arrived yesterday. And so I speak only me. Please, the PowerPoint. Okay. Ecco. You can see. Okay, I don't. have a technical problem.
We will share it for you in a second.
Yes. I don't work.
Yes, now we see it. Huh?
Okay, but my PowerPoint don't work. My PC, I have some problems. I have problems of connection, sorry.
Just a second, we'll upload it for you.
Alessandro, credo che lo caricheranno adesso dall'ufficio OX, quindi sarà sufficiente dire next slide e poi sono loro che lo fanno andare, ora stanno caricando. E la presentazione è stata caricata, quindi credo che adesso si possa procedere chiedendo loro di andare avanti con le slide. Alessandro, ci senti? Non è che si è interrotto il collegamento? I am afraid there must be some problem of connection because I don't see Alessandro responsive at the moment.
Maybe let's hear from Trento at this point, and then hopefully Alessandro will reconnect and we'll hear from Volterra.
Yes. At this point, I'm sorry for this slight change of schedule. I would ask Elisabetta Pozzarelli from the City of Trento to share their presentation on Open Trento, Trento Aperta. Elisabetta, floor is yours.
Thank you. One moment. I try to share. I hope to be more fortunate. One moment. Do you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So good afternoon. I'm happy to be here with you. I present Trento Aperta. The summer was a test bed for an experimenting with new ways of cultural entertainment in the city after a long period of the pandemic. Citizens were eager to socialize and express their ideas and stories, which gave them the hope and the desire to start again. Interpreting these perceived needs, we wondered about the role that culture can and must have in our society as a mode of a social cohesion and a way to not only stimulate the economy by imagining a season of cultural activities that attempt to describe a changed city that has a new expectation, new needs, and unfortunately, new vulnerabilities. For this reason, we have paid particular attention to the parts of the city that most constantly express the demand of culture and that during the tough months of the pandemic were sacrificed the most by creating neighborhood events focusing on the most fragile and vulnerable segment of the population and working in cooperation with the territory to support the association that are indispensable to the local community. The cultural model that the government of the city would like to propose is one that intervenes in the vulnerabilities of the region, try to mitigate them in the short term, but above all, creating the condition for them to be resolved. culture is a catalyst of a social mobility, a creator of opportunities, a space of freedom, and a promoter of people's express as well as unexpressed talents. To make sure children from the suburbs are able to find not only a cinema nearby, a theater in the park, the possibility to read books for free, which is already a lot, but the possibility to learn how to make a video, to act in person, to participate in a book club that helps makes them passionate about literature. The summer in 2021, all of this was transformed into a cultural program, which was the outcome of the collaboration between many partners and a shared and broader planning that has allowed to the city to return to life collectively, to breathe and walk again, to share the city life from its positive and negative aspect seems to have become something dangerous. This was a diversified program, not only for the type of users, but also for the type of cultural offerings proposed, ranging from cinema to theater, concerts, group events in the vicinity. Realized with a participatory approach, historical and cultural events, such as saloons and meetings, and finally sports and recreational activities. With a total of more than 300 cultural events held during the summer, thanks to the collaboration of more than 200 project partners, in addition to space and opportunities to participate in sporting activities. They offered citizens and tourists the opportunity to meet and rediscover the lesser known urban space. Here are some statistics just to give an idea of the intervention. 36 film screenings in various districts, 260 artistic performances concentrated over 4 weekends that liven up the city center with a collective action called Art in the Shop, which saw the participation of performers and local merchants. 28 shows at the Capovolto Theatre, 22 projects of neighborhood events, 6 concerts across various city districts, 2 concerts organized by the Student University Association, in addition to other events. Here are some statistics, an experiment that in the question conventional tools and criteria, as well as standards and traditional measures of cultural offerings, space, centers, and peripheries, that open new apps and scenarios that will form the basis for a new design of cultural events offered, which is here a real vehicle for inclusion and population growth, in which people, citizens, and also various business are no longer just spectators or passive visitors, but active protagonists of these cultural activities. The planning of the next several years will start from an analysis of what has been done so far this year, and to help evolve this first experimentation, it will include working further for the creation and organization of networks, taking advantage for the strengths and the efforts, the organizational energies created, and the communication with the territory and its citizens, in order to reach out to society and discover often unexpressed or unconscious needs on a continuous path of innovation and evolution. In conclusion, there will not only be culturally focused projects, but also the design of a new city through culture, a unique, distinctive, and inclusive city. The culture is a characteristic element of the city that is also a service and benefit to the people, something that is developed with the collaboration of everyone, with attention to the places and the appreciation of our tradition and our landscape. A collective action of care for the common goods, tangible and intangible, that represent the real added value of a territory and that plays its part in addressing the major societal challenge of our generation for climate change, of inequalities from health to the educational poverty, as well as material ones. Culture possesses the ability to provide an inclusive, caring, and sustainable city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elisabetta. That's an interesting sample of the very, very vibrant range of activities that Trento is undergoing after its bid as the culture capital. And now we have a video contribution from another candidate city, in this case from the 2022 competition, which is Trapani. So I would invite the OECD office to launch the video to show us the Trapani experience. Do we have some technical problems with the video?
Yes, it is just coming. Just 1 second. It's just loading
Okay,
up.
thank you. Thank you, sir.
Non ho voce ma grido. Non ho ali ma volo. Non ho denti ma mordo. Non ho bocca ma parlo. Soffio dopo soffio, ho portato un mondo di colori in questa falce di terra. Con rastrelli invisibili ho raccolto lingue, preghiere, popoli. Ho sparso mistero, ho impedito il silenzio. Ho suonato corde di bucato, boschi, capelli, vette. Dirigo un'orchestra d'aria. Carezzo la testa bionda del grano con pettini di scirocco. Con soffio antico nutro le vigne e ho tutto un repertorio di zufoli con cui spolpo, sbatto, frutto, sollevo. Porgo all'orecchio un sussurro lontano. Al naso un ricordo bambino. Quando infurio sono maestrale, quando ammansisco, gregale. E quando arriva l'ora annuncio la stagione con un volo di coriandoli. Entra ponente. Scavalco montagne, stiro mari, spiego vele, sfido ogni fessura, riempio ogni narice. Pelle sulla pelle, labbra sulle labbra, ci passiamo lo stesso respiro. Come amanti in un bacio, ci uniamo. Siamo strette ad abbraccio, corrente che porta, che mischia, che prende. Corsa a perdifiato, approdo e ritorno, ferita e riscatto. Siamo testa che spinge, mondo che avanza. Siamo aria che danza, noi siamo il vento.
So this was a very poetic rendition of one of the probably secret gems of Italian heritage, which is Trapani, that, by the way, is a place that is absolutely worthwhile to visit. And it's difficult to resume for the non-Italian speakers the text, which is a very, very poetic text about the wind, and basically how the wind, in some sense, ties together all the dimensions of the local identity and richness of experience of this territory. But I think that images spoke for themselves from this point of view. So I think that's been really a poetic break that we all needed at this point. At this point, I think that also Alessandro Furiesi from Volterra is back. And so I think that we can upload the presentation ourselves and give to him back the floor to illustrate the case of Volterra 22. Alessandro.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for the problem, but the connection was out previously. If you can open the presentation. Thank you. Okay, I presented the project of Volterra for the next year. We have a lot of ideas to work, and the ideas born by the program of our candidature to Capital of Culture of Italy of 2022. We are for not win, we haven't win the competition, but we have started during the organization of the program with an important group of work that realize a project that we have intention to work for next year. Because if you start the okay, we prepare the project, and the project we permitted us to enter in the short list with this the dossier entitled Human Regeneration. It's a project very interesting. I was part of the staff of the presentation, and it was very important for Volterra because as the idea liked to the Tuscany region president that decided to establish the title of Tuscany City of Culture and to attribute it to Volterra for the year 2022. And we work for 2022 with this program. Okay. Volterra as the laboratory for the future of Tuscany. We will do it for Volterra is not a work for a single city, not only for our city, but we want that is the construction of a model of which Volterra is the test. Tuscany City of Culture is a tool in the hand of regional and local administration to favor the generation of a series of initiatives that accelerate the cultural, tourist, and economic recovery after the pandemic period. A new model of co-creation and cultural participation that combines a top-down vision and a bottom-up vision in a collaboration process that can build excellent results with a particular look at the new generation. We want to work especially with young people not only of Volterra, but all region. We want that young people of all region of Tuscany arrive here and they can work and they can try to have experimental program for the city. So what are the pillars of the activities? Volterra has designed as very well articulated dossier entitled Human Regeneration. The pillars are young people called to imagine, plan, and manage a unique cultural model for the city and the territory. Volterra is a city where culture becomes an instrument of human and urban care and regeneration, starting by the hospital and the prison. Involvement of the territory of 4 provinces around Volterra, that creating a synergistic network of collaboration, exchange, and territorial promotion. We want to start the project process for participation in UNESCO Creative City Network based on the theme of Alabaster. Work on craftsmanship, that is the more representative cultural element of our territory, and create a live show as an element of permanent reflection of the individual. And the cultural heritage, that is our big attractor, it must be more attractor, a great attractor with the creation of projects that increase its usability on several levels. And so Volterra in 2022 becomes a platform for the excellences of Tuscan culture for 2022, working with young and association of all regions. Continue to international relaunch of the two treasures of Volterra, the Alabaster and the Salts. Human Regeneration Festival in another idea for 2022, organized starting from the experience of the Compagnia della Fortezza and Armando Pulso. We want to offer the cultural heritage of Volterra for exhibitions and activities that involve also museums, municipalities, and the cultural centers of Tuscany and other regions of countries. and create in the spaces of the former psychiatric hospital and prison places of reflection, creation, and permanent research on the theme of human regeneration and care through culture. What are the audience? The audience that we will be involved are four. The international audience, eager to return in Italy after the pandemic, a regional audience involved with the project Voltaire Door of Tuscany, national audience, and young people. Young people must be the most important audience for us, as I told at the start of this presentation. And the 2022 will be followed in 2023 with other actions. And we want that this experimental model can move for years the development of Voltaire and Tuscany based on culture, care, and regeneration. A model that will involve young people of Voltaire and Tuscany. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. I think that again, that's a very important example of how the legacy of candidate cities can be important and also very much forward-looking, like in this case that it turned into a specific title, in this case at the regional level, but that's, I think, a very constructive and effective way to carry forward the legacy of a national candidacy. So thank you very much. That was really inspiring, and we look forward, of course, to see what will happen in Volterra in 2022 and onwards. So at this point, we are coming to the close of this very intense day. I'm just checking whether there are okay. If there are okay. I think that there was only one question that was addressed to Erminia about the nuclear plant regeneration activities that she mentioned and how sustainable and safe they are. So Erminia, do you want briefly to comment on those?
Yes, maybe it's not clear, or maybe the non-Italians do not know that Italy has no active nuclear power plants since 1987. So the year after the Chernobyl disaster, it was a referendum in Italy, and so all these nuclear plants were closed. And so long time has passed, and the work to clean these nuclear plants from all the dangerous materials has been already done in previous years, but nevertheless they are there and they can be used, they can be reconverted for cultural purposes. So no danger actually.
Thank you very much, Erminia. Of course, this is reassuring, although in Italy, of course, we are very aware that we have taken this way a long time ago, and probably fortunately so. Okay, so we are ready for the final remarks from this very intense couple of hours. I think that we really had many different stimuli, but I think it's also important to try to develop some lines of reflection in terms of not only what we have learned, and we have learned a lot actually, but also how can we inscribe this into a wider, let's say, conceptual scaffolding for imagining culture-led development. The Italian experience from this point of view, I think, is very interesting, because the Italian competition for the National Capital of Culture, of course, is gathering so many ideas and so many, of course, efforts from local administrations to imagine possible innovative cultural strategies at the local level. So it's also important to, as it was said and mentioned in many cases, to also imagine a sort of common ground to start developing and experimenting and comparing experiences. Well, I think that also from what we saw during the presentations, there are mainly 5 areas that I think we should consider as pillars in terms of a sustainable, culture-driven local development strategy. The first one is what we could call collectively a quality area, which means that we have seen some experiences. Of course, it is extremely important to have on one side a very strong focus on innovative, artistic and cultural research and development. So it's very important to still strive for new ideas. These are, of course, aspects that sometimes when we stress the participatory dimension of culture go in some sense in second place, but it's very important to stress that we still need a lot of focus on shifting the boundary from the point of view of artistic and cultural innovation, because sometimes this really shows us in an impressive way new undiscovered possibilities. At the same time, this was mentioned several times today, there is another area which is connecting to knowledge creation more generally. For example, the role of universities, we saw it in many cases today, is extremely important. And so when we think of cultural ecosystems, we should really think of cultural and knowledge ecosystems more and more, because they are closely integrated. And a third element in the quality dimension that is clearly so crucial is today the quality of local government. Not only at the European level, the differences in regional development can be ascribed to a large extent in differences in quality of local government. So this really means that, again, culture can become also a driver for the improvement also of local and territorial governance, exactly because it engages local communities with such low, complex and far-reaching activities that this can really cause a leap forward in the quality of local government. For example, what we have seen again from the European projects, I think both from ECOC, SME and the ROC in this particular case, and the clear example of the very, very complex and far-reaching approach of the Basque government show us that the culture can really become a test bed to develop very sophisticated local development strategies. So the relationship between quality of cultural proposal and quality of local government is a very, very important point to stress. Then we have a second area, which is an area that has always clearly been important and all the more today, which is the attraction of talent and resources. So from this point of view, clearly the circulation of talent, the capacity to stage, and not only to stage, but really to set the conditions for and more plural and more culturally diverse local ecosystem of creation is important. Of course, we all emphasize the cultural specificities, the local identities of places, but we know by experience that the local identity of places has always been, especially in the most interesting and vital examples, the result of a cauldron of different cultural influences, different cultural exchanges. So from this point of view, of course, the attraction dimension is very important, and crucially enough, for example, the capacity to attract external resources also in terms of investment resources. From this point of view, in the cultural sector has historically been relatively weak throughout, not only in the case of Italy that we are considering with special attention today. So this is a second line that of course is very challenging. The third one has to do with the development of local talent and the development of local social and creative entrepreneurship. That's another aspect that, for example, in the ECOC SME project was so clear, and it's absolutely important in this regard, because we need to create a full-fledged ecosystem in which the non-for-profit dimension, the for-profit dimension, and the driving role of small and medium enterprises, for example, at the local level in the culture and creative sector is so important, so fundamental. Then we have a fourth dimension, so quality, attraction, and development so far, but then we have the social impact dimension that is becoming so central. Also in the vision, of course, OECD, the European Commission, there is a UNESCO, there is a clear drive towards this dimension that has at least three different components. One has to do with the capability building. So these projects are also very important because not only they give stimuli to the local community, but create a wonderful opportunity to acquire new capabilities. For example, it was briefly mentioned, but significantly mentioned, the role of the co-creation and open design school process in Matera. I had the luck to evaluate directly the impact of this, analyzing the impact for the participants, and it was so clear in this specific case that really capability building was what made the difference in terms of making this process sustainable on the territory. Then the second aspect has to do with the community involvement, which includes, by the way, co-creation itself, but really has to put emphasis on a shift from the concept of an audience, somebody who's there receiving content, to a context in which everybody is a player towards in this kind of process. Of course, audiences are in some sense still very important, but one of the big challenges for future cultural ecosystems, and especially for local communities, is really turning everybody into a producer and not simply a user of content. That's fundamental, and that's a social second social component that is of extreme importance. And the third one is addressing directly through cultural production and participation social criticalities, marginality, exclusion, discrimination. These aspects are fundamental. Where there is this kind of a problem on the table, it is extremely unlikely that you can have a sustainable culture-driven local development process. So the topics of inclusion today are really, really becoming of paramount importance. And finally, a fifth area that we could describe as networking, which means internal networking, the capacity to orchestrate the common participation, the collaboration between the local actors, which sometimes is very critical. It's easier said than done in many cases. So it's extremely important to work on this, and generally culture capital programs in their most effective versions have exactly this function, really creating a new possibility of collaboration across local actors. And the second one is external networking, of course, creating a wider range network that really connect together the local territory with maybe far away, but sometimes functionally complementary or analogous territories in other places across the world. So these 5 dimensions can become in some sense a sort of conceptual canvas. And in fact, the scientific literature has increasingly converged in considering them as a sort of potential blueprint for cultural policy design, and even for the evaluation of ex post efficacy of culture capitals programs. And so from this point of view, I think that there is, of course, lots to do still, but at the same time, this useful mingling of conceptualization and experience is creating possibly, hopefully, a community of practice, not only among Italian cities, but also with across the OECD countries, across the different institutions that today are so involved and committed toward ambitious goals of culture-driven development. I think we live in very interesting times in this regard. And of course, the substantial contribution of recovery plans at the beginning of the European programming and other initiatives that are also flourishing outside of Europe create probably the most favorable context for this that we have seen in decades. So it's extremely important that we touch upon that we really clinch this opportunity and make this next step forward further. I think everything is in some sense is going in the right direction. It's up to us now. So I think that at this point I can pass the floor back to my colleague Katia Trocchina for the final considerations. Katia.
Yes, thank you, Luigi, and thank you to all the speakers and all the participants and attendees who joined us for this indeed very intense 2 hours. And well, nothing really more to say, just well, thank you, and we hope to see you again in 1 month's time at the next webinar, where we'll in fact focus on heritage and tourism. It will be very interesting to see, I mean, in this rapidly changing world, how to stimulate creative tourism, cultural tourism, and how this can be part of the recovery strategy for places. So with this, thank you, a big thank you to the team as well, who was supporting us throughout these 2 hours, and a big thank you to speakers. See you soon.
Bye-bye.